After sitting for a year or two and doing nothing, I sort of had this one thing in the back of my head that was bothering me. And it was that when I made the 2008 video, I had to sign a contract. And they gave me a list of countries. They said, you can go wherever you want, you just can't go to these 10 places. And they were countries that the US had sanctions with, and a US corporation can't do business with those countries. So I had to sign a contract that said I would not go to North Korea, wouldn't go to Afghanistan, wouldn't go to Syria, wouldn't go to Lebanon. All these countries that, the more I traveled, the more important those countries became to me, because I was realizing this thing over and over again. When I first started traveling, the first time I went to Vietnam, I was really scared. I didn't know what people were going to be like. I didn't know if they were going to be friendly. I didn't know if it was going to be safe. And I discovered when I got there, it's totally safe. It's fine. And then I'd go to another country. I'd have the same fear. I'd step off the plane. What's going to happen? Totally fine. I'd go to Yemen. I'd go to Afghanistan with these same fears, and I would meet people who were friendly and welcoming. In fact, they'd go out of their way to welcome me because they knew that I was scared. I realized that the world is a whole lot safer and more open than it's ever been. And it's a whole lot safer than we realize, because we turn on the news, we open up the newspaper, and we see things exploding. That's the job of the media, is to tell you what's going wrong. So not to fault them for this, but they create, it's not necessarily an accurate reflection of the world we live in. It's just a reflection of what the problems are. You ever heard this concept in journalism? I don't know if any of you are journalism students, but what is it? It's man bites dog. Do you guys know this? Anybody ever heard of man bites dog? Are you a professor? Okay. So if a dog bites a man, that's not going to make it into the newspaper, because dogs bite people all the time. If a man bites a dog, that's unusual. That's going to make it into the newspaper. There might be one man biting a dog for every 100 dogs that bite men, but the man who bites the dog is the news story, and that's how the media works. Their job is not to create an accurate reflection of the world we live in. Their job is to tell you about the crazy stuff that's happening. So in traveling, I've come to realize that these places that sound really dangerous and you only ever hear about bad things happening there are filled with people who are friendly and peaceful and want to live in a peaceful world. And the people who want to hurt you are a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. And we give them way too much attention. And this video that I had started making in Vietnam as a goof, I slowly realized was this amazingly powerful tool for changing the perception that we have of the world, for showing people in a different context to how we usually see them. And particularly those places that I've named, that we only see in that one context of war and strife and suffering and hatred. I could show that in a different context, but I'd signed a contract that said I couldn't go there. So I decided I wanted to make one more video and focus on those places. And so I set off to try and pitch this to sponsors, because I had 45 million views on my last video. So the next one was probably going to do pretty well too. And I started pitching them on this idea of letting me go to North Korea and Afghanistan. That is a terrible pitch for a number of reasons. I took it to stride. I took it to anybody who would listen, and I got zero interest. One, nobody wants to sponsor a guy who's going to Afghanistan. Nobody wants to do that. It's too risky. Two, if you're trying to market a product, the last thing you want to do in your messaging is tell people not to be afraid. It's just not a very powerful sales incentive. When you want people to buy things, you want to tell them, you smell, you're unattractive, you don't have friends, the world is dangerous, people want to hurt you, people want to kill you. You don't want to tell people not to be afraid. So I had this really bad pitch, was all I'm trying to do is tell people, relax, you don't need to be afraid. And I'm also not a very good salesperson, as you can maybe see. So I couldn't find a sponsor. And I was already committed to this. I had already decided this is what I was going to do, but I couldn't find any way to fund it. So I said, screw it. And I decided to just go and start making it, because I didn't really need anybody to tell me to give me permission. I could just go. Fortunately, when one door closes, another one opens. And even though sponsorship opportunities had dried up, and really the whole business of online marketing had changed in those 4 or 5 years since I started. In the very beginning, remember how I talked about Stride? They said, you did this thing, we don't know how to do it, we want you to do it for us. 5 years later, all those companies had social media marketing experts, and they had viral marketing experts, and they had agencies that they hired and paid a lot of money to know how to do this thing. In the very beginning, it was the Wild West. Nobody knew how to do it. But now everybody knew how to do it, or thought they knew how to do it. And it was a lot harder to find people to sponsor you. So fortunately, something that's changed, you guys probably know this now, on YouTube, you can run advertising. You know how you used to be able to watch a video on YouTube and you just get it immediately and it was awesome? But now you have to watch this annoying commercial before the video starts? Well, that's what keeps people like me going. And I get annoyed too when I watch those videos, but then I have to remember this is my income. The way it works is pretty simple. You watch a video on YouTube, times 1,000,000, you get about, oh, I don't know, what's that, 66 cents? It doesn't pay out great. It's not like chewing gum money. It's not like Visa money. But every time somebody watches one of my videos, especially if they stay on that ad long enough for it to trigger, I get paid a little bit of money. So I had a way of making the money back as long as I got the views. And so I set off to make the 2012 video. Now, if you're making something on the internet and you want it to be really popular, I'm going to have to skip ahead 2 slides. The last thing you want to do is have a point. If you want something to hit big on YouTube, you don't want to have a point. And here I was with this message that was really important to me that I wanted to get across to people. And maybe it would have been better off if I was just doing one of these things, but it got to the point where it takes 2 years for me to make these videos. And I'd become a dad by that time. And if I was going to take off around the world, I needed to be saying something. I needed to be saying something that mattered to me. And that's, if I could have 45 million people's attention for 5 minutes, that's what I wanted to communicate to them, which is that we don't need to be afraid of each other.